welcome to the show.
Hey man, finally. I've been waiting months to talk to you.
I know it's been one of those. It's been one of those things where we went back and forth. You know, you are the second Montreal native that I've had on the show in the last 24 hours.
Come on.
Yes, yesterday I had a gal from Montreal, much heavier accent than you, and she's a spear fisher woman. She just decided to get it. She was just on Joe Rogan's podcast yesterday as well. I got confused because I was looking at my notes and I was looking at Montreal. I write down keywords. So I see like Montreal spearfishing. And then on your notes, it said Montreal spear program. And I was like, oh my God, it's parallels.
That is so crazy. As you said that, I was like, what are the odds? You know, but that's funny. She probably looks better in a bathing suit than I do. But
well, she does look terrific, I have to say. All right, so I want to pick it up in your in Montreal in the 70s when you were 15. Your mom had asked you, hey, what are you going to do with your life? What do you want to do? And you said, I'm going to develop my own self-defense system like Bruce Lee. Yes. Where do you suppose that sort of foresight came from at such a young age?
Amazing. Great. You stumped me right out of the gate with a deep, really deep question. You know, I've done hundreds and hundreds of podcasts over the years, and they're all good, but the questions are like, so tell us where it started. What's your origin story? You know, like, so you get used to, you know, pressing autopilot and just going, even though I'm passionate, I'm engaged, but hats off to you for that. I think something happened when I started teaching, or when I started training 3 years earlier. I was about 12 and a half, 13, and I got jumped by two guys. Went home, told my dad, hey, I just got beaten up, you know, after this game. And he was like, you know, you got to learn martial arts. There's one school. And I went to the school and I felt like I'd never felt such peace when I started studying the martial arts. As scary as it was, I was afraid to spar. I was afraid. And that's really part of my background and the whole no fear messaging that is probably my mission right now, is getting people to change their relationship with fear. But I grew up with so much fear. I would, you know, as a wrestler, gymnastics, competitive skier, I always had so much fear that I never enjoyed the activity. No matter how good I got, I didn't enjoy the activity. I was just, no one had ever said, you know, hey, you got to embrace the fear. It's the anxiety. It's the pre-event, like adrenaline, and everyone has it. They just don't talk about it. Well, no one ever told that to me. So I assumed there was something wrong with me. I must not be ready. And that's an interesting reframe. We can get deeper into that later, but all of that. So years and years and years of fear, finding the martial arts. And it was this assumption that this was going to save me. And so when I started studying and I discovered Bruce Lee, and of course he was captivating and iconic in every factor, from his physique to how he moved to even his story of overcoming oppression and his racism, and you'll never make it because in Hollywood you're not going to be a star if you're a Chinese actor back in the 60s, right? This is all documented. And just that hero's journey of his, and the fact that it was connected to martial arts, I was like, but that doesn't completely answer your question. You know, that's dreaming. Every kid, I want to be an astronaut. I want to be there was something I knew, and I can't explain this. So, and this is neat. When I first started Taekwondo with 30 kids in the class, at the end of, have you ever done martial arts?
I did Shotokan karate when I was probably 16 years old, but I'm 55 now. So,
okay.
You know.
So, but you remember, like at the end of a form, there's always like a ki, and you do like the end of a form, right?
Yeah.
So here I am, 13 years old. It's just starting. I'd be so excited, man. I'd like tying my belt, putting the uniform on. I just felt like I was part of something. And when we were told to ki at the end of the form, I couldn't do it. Everyone, all the kids are going ki and yelling, and I couldn't do it. And my brain went, why would I yell before my punch? Wouldn't that betray the element of surprise? That was what my 13-year-old brain said. And what I did in class so that I didn't get in trouble for the instructors is I mouthed it in time with everyone else. So if you get 29 kids going ki and then throwing a punch, I was just going, but I said, I'm not going to yell before I punch, because then I'll let the guy I'm trying to hit know I'm about to do something. Because when you yell, it triggers it. And that might seem like insignificant, but thinking back on my life, that was very significant. That was a behavioral insight that when you look at the self-defense system, the communication system, the fear management system, it's understanding these nuances. It's a dance between instincts, intuition, and intelligence, what I call the 3 I's. My instinct said, don't do it. I didn't have a lot of intuition at the time because I was young, but it was like, your intuition can be loosely described as a voice that whispers in your ear, based on things and experiences. Like, I wouldn't do that if I were you, and you kind of know why. So it was like that thing where I knew and I teach that to this day, and it's controversial, like, because in the martial arts world, you yell before you do things. So.
Are you the kind of person in other areas of your life that really questions assumptions? So in other words, there was an assumption there that, this is just how we do it, right? You just yell the ki. But is this sort of your nature to look at things and go, yeah, but why are you doing it that way? Because it doesn't make sense to me.
Great question. Only if I mentioned the 3 I's, and it's a pillar principle in everything we do. Does this resonate with my instincts? Do I feel some sort of homeostasis? Is my intuition supporting? If I asked you and everyone in your audience, have you ever been screwed in business? Well, the answer, if you're an entrepreneur, is fuck yeah, right?
Yep.
Am I allowed to swear? Too late, right?
Swear away.
Have you ever been screwed in business? Yes. Have you ever been screwed a couple of times? Yes. Have you ever been lied to by an employee or a colleague? Have you ever been screwed in a relationship? And I don't mean,
I know,
carnal knowledge. I mean, right. And everyone goes, yeah. And I go, how many times when a business deal went sideways or a relationship went off, did you say afterwards, you know what? I knew that was going to fucking happen. I knew that guy when I met him was going to screw me. There was something about him. Agree. Everyone says that. So my joke with intuition is, if you knew, why'd you let it happen? If you knew, right? And so there's a voice. One of the things that, particularly with my brand of self-defense, is I tell people always choose safety. Choosing safety, don't confuse that with playing it safe, because that's a boring life, but always choose safety. And the safest thing in certain situations might be to charge the bad guy. The safest thing may be just to not say anything and sit back and watch, right? But how do we choose safety? You need to be thinking the 3 I's. What are my instincts telling me? What is my intuition whispering in my ear? And then if I blend my next action based on my true instincts and my intuition, which is how am I wired? Like, if you said to me, I'm going off on a mini tangent here, some people work all night and get their shit done, and some people work all day. If you go, no, you can't work all night because I'm going to share with you this sleeping, report. Well, you might change the way that person's wired, and they need to, that's them. They're a musician, or they're whatever it is, right? So people are wired a certain way, metaphorically. I'm not just talking about the actual, physiology, DNA level. And then the intuition, of course, is, the sum of your experiences and your intelligence and what you've learned. And I found that, and it's hard because we don't teach this in school. How do you cultivate the intelligence to listen to your intuition and then make an intelligent decision based on that? So you asked me a question like, do I always challenge assumptions? Only if something in the 3 I's gets alerted. So like, if I said to you, do you always check if you got a full tank of gas in your car? And the answer is no, but yes, it depends. If I'm going on a long trip, I'll check. But you trust the little ping, when it gets down to, it'll ping, fill up. We trust low battery warning. We don't always look battery. In other words, those little radar blips from technology, we have that built in us. And it's the three eyes: your instincts, your intuition, and those together create and formulate, this is like, my little poetic license, your intelligence. Because if I get screwed in a business deal, and then afterwards I go, I'm such an asshole, like I knew that guy was dirty, I knew he was wrong, and when he changed that, he wouldn't sign that NDA, and he wanted to, and he just said, I'm a handshake guy, you're an idiot when you get burned like that, because you weren't listening to the three eyes. And that opens up, of course, another Pandora's box. Why do you do the deal, right? That's,
What's the difference from your perspective between instinct and intuition?
So I think instinct is more of the hardwired part. So like, are you an early riser? You like getting up at 5 a.m. again?
I am. Yeah.
I hate that. Right. I'm like, I much prefer I wake up when I wake up, and sometimes it's 5 in the morning, but I know guys like you, and I'm jealous of you. It's like, yeah, man, I'm up at 4:30. I do my meditation. I do my journaling. I do this. I want to love ice baths. I've read all about them. I love the heat. I live near the ocean. I moved to California, from Montreal. Yeah. I love the heat. I'll do cold showers sometimes. I'll go in the icy ocean with some friends and scream but like this every day, like I'm not wired like that. Now, could I adapt? Now, someone could say, well, it's for your mental fortitude and your toughness, and you're doing it for that. I go, yeah, I'm pretty fucking mentally tough already, right? I'm just not wired. Will I do it? Yeah. So that's an interesting. So the instincts to me is, and again, from an entrepreneur's perspective versus like like my self-defense system that I started developing intuitively based on instincts, right? So I would see things happen. We had a slogan back in the 80s that self-defense should be behaviorally inspired and genetically wired. Inspired by real behavior, not, well, in the 1700s, we used to fight like this, so let's bow and well, wait a minute, fighting is completely different. Let's let real behavior inspire what we do. And then genetically wired, make biology work for you. What is the neurobiology of survival? If I jump through the camera right now, you're not doing wax on, wax off. You're doing startle, flinch, push away danger, cover your head. So I built a whole system, but I built the system based on the three eyes: trusting my instincts, trusting my intuition, and then the concept there is 1 + 1 = 10x. That's your intelligence. I mean, think about this. Like, I lost a $12 million company in 2010. I shouldn't say I lost it. It wasn't like, here's my company. It was fucking stolen from me. Mm-hmm. After the dust settled, and I use me as an example because it's very ironic. When I first started getting signs that something was off, I went to my COO and I said, what's this? I confronted it. And because he was in on it with them, he lied masterfully. But he was a guy I hired out of Harvard. I had to try, he's my COO. Hey, dude, why are they changing the holding company? No, it's a tax benefit for them. It doesn't affect us. Really? That's weird. Hey, how come the manufacturer over here wants to have this in their name for this patent application? Oh, it needs to be because they own the equipment that's designing this piece of, and like his answers were good, but inside, man, I was still like, something was off. My fear that this was happening prevented me from, turning on the metaphoric spotlight and going a little deeper into the dark. I superficially did it. And then what ended up happening is it all blew up and I dissolved the company, but I lost a $12 million a year program in the dissolution. And it was insane, but I explain it because the pre-contact cues that I would, if you hired me to teach you modern self-defense, I'd say, look, you need to understand the timeline of violence. Shit doesn't just happen. If you think about how most self-defense, if I said to you, describe a self-defense scenario, mind you would probably say, a guy gets me in a headlock. Someone's got me grabbed here. Someone's got a knife or a gun in my face. That's not how violence starts. This isn't Star Trek. They didn't beam down into your personal space, right? There was a stalking, evaluation part, and then there was a contact part. Is this strategy going to work? And then there was the move. And that happens in business, that happens in relationships, that happens in violence. And it was an amazing, it took about 5 years, 6 years before I could say cathartic experience for me.
I bet.
But it was an amazing thing to go, everything that I teach people in self-defense could have been applied here, and I didn't apply it wholly. And I almost lost everything: marriage, security for the kids. It was horrific. I'm trying to somehow tie that to the getting deeper, the instincts. My instincts were saying something's wrong. My intuition was saying something's wrong. And then I said, I don't want to believe it. And I sided with confirmation bias, cognitive dissonance, and a whole bunch of other rationale, the rational lies metaphor. Yep. Yeah, it must be this, it must be that, only to find out instincts and intuition were correct. This was happening.
Where does intuition come from?
Wow. We're getting into like metaphysical black box, because I don't know. Why does somebody look at you and go like, I want to be an entrepreneur? No, I want to be second in command. No, hey, do you have kids?
I do. I have two.
How old?
Well, interesting. One's 24, lives near you in San Diego. Wow. And the other one is 7, and she's obviously with us.
Nice. So I've got 3 kids, 30, 23, 20. Olivia, who's 20, she wants to be a chemist. I'm like, the fuck what are you gonna make drugs for the family? What do you mean? What do you want to be? You want to be a, obviously I'm being facetious now.
Yeah.
But my son wants to be a fitness guru. He's been training his whole life. Really, really good coach. My middle daughter loves hair. She's, she wants to have her own salon. Like crazy different. And they're all passionate about it, like crazy passionate. That to me is somehow they're connecting to their current intuition about so I look at intuition as, and that's why I made the joke, like metaphysical black box. It's their pride. I've never even looked up the definition for intuition. I probably should, because I use the word, but I have my own like insight, into it. And it's this idea of so the way I describe it, because I'm jumping back and forth between trying to give you like some sort of cool definition versus how I share it with people when I'm coaching and mentoring and talking. And I always describe it as a voice that whispers in your ear, in your mind. It's something you hear. You don't go, guys, my intuition just said. It's like something, this isn't right. This is good. That's what you want to do. And I look at it, I go, where does that come from? And some of it is like, and I'll tell you a really cool self-defense story. And then I'll ask you, how did I come up with that?
Yeah.
When I alluded to, I mentioned earlier that I got jumped when I was 12, went home, told my dad, right?
Mhm.
So here's the story. I just finished baseball game. I'm walking alone and coming off the field. All everyone said goodbye. I was like last to leave. And I'm all alone, and two kids, I'm 12 and a half, turning 13, two, I guess, 15, 16-year-olds from the high school up the street. And you're 16 versus 12 or 13. That's a big, psychologically and physically, there's a big difference. And they go, "Hey, kid." Yeah, I go, "Oh, older kids are talking to me." I'm like, I run over for the slaughter, right? Yeah. And they go, "Hey, you go to school here?" They go, "Yeah." "When are you going to Western Laval? The high school?" "Oh, next year." "Well, welcome to high school." "Thank you." And they grab me and they get me in like the half Nelson, like my arms behind my back, and I'm struggling like this, man. I'm like, "Get off me, get off me." And one of them does, remember Sugar Ray Leonard's bolo punch against Duran?
Yep.
He goes like this, and everything goes into slow motion. And he's going like this. He goes, "Welcome." He's laughing to school, and he goes like this. He goes to hit me, and as his punch lands, I scream. I think it's going to kill me. I've never been beaten up by two guys before.
Yep.
And I scream as it hits me. Now I've been skiing since I'm 3 years old. I played every sport. I'm wrestling. Your audience may or may not know this, but when a boxer is doing body impact training, he's holding onto the ropes and someone's there, whack, whack, and he's hitting him to the body. You're contracting your abs as tight as you can, right? You're controlling your breathing. I was as contracted as I could be because I was trying to pull away. The guys behind me holding me, my abs were like a plywood at this point, right? But I don't know that. I'm 12. The punch hits me. I scream. And I scream, I think my sister has a more manly scream than I screamed. I thought I was going to die, right? It's like, ah. And as it hits me, I scream, and I felt, and I thought I was going to, I thought my ribs were going to break and I was going to die. I mean, I really freaked out that I immediately groaned and went, ah. And I felt the guy behind me, I felt his grip loosen up in concert with my moan. And my brain at 12 immediately went, "He thinks you're hurt. Do that again." And I went, and I gagged, and I felt him let go of me and drop. And as I went down, I saw the other guy's eyes, and they took off. And I'm on the ground going, as they turned the corner. And as soon as they turned the corner, I went, "Wow, what the fuck just happened?" Fixed my shirt, ran home. All of that is intuition. All of that is a voice saying, "Do this now, do this again, trust this, go." And there's not a mechanical definition that I have or use. Anytime in the last 30 plus years, 40 years teaching, if I say to somebody, "Have you ever had a voice in your head tell you, trust this person, don't do this, go there," and everyone does. So I go, don't blindly listen to that, but you need to weigh and consider that voice. That's a self-awareness connection, because then we get really down a deep rabbit hole on that, because some people hear voices and don't make good life choices. So it's not that.
Let's dig into that a little bit. So now, now it's all nice. And we're, what did, I can't remember that. I guess it was, what the hell was his name? Said everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. Mike Tyson.
Everyone thinks it was Tyson, but it was actually the great heavyweight boxer, Joe Louis.
Joe Louis.
But everyone quotes it as Tyson.
He gets the attribution for it.
Right.
You've said that the secret is in stress inoculating through realistic scenario training, along with verbal skills and self-coaching strategies. So a lot of what we're talking about is principles. But when your heart's pounding, you're terrified, and fear takes over, listening to those three eyes can be a bit of a challenge. So how do you inoculate them? Or maybe you can give me some examples of the kinds of drills, role plays, scenarios that you do that simulates a realistic thing that they can respond to in the real worlds. And does that transfer when they're not prepared for it? In other words, I'm in your gym and you're training me, and we've got all these things that are happening, and I get good at it. But does that transfer when it's 2 a.m. and I'm coming out of the bar, with a couple of drinks in me, and the last thing I'm thinking about is this? You understand the question?
Yeah. So yeah, great question. So obviously we're specifically talking, self-defense,
Yeah.
some sort of violent
Yeah.
encounter.
Yeah.
And the reason I ask that is because it's interesting. If I, we've got, business training that we do, and a lot of the understanding the timeline of violence is, you can lay that over a business confrontation: detect, diffuse, defend, detect and avoid, defuse and de-escalate. And of course, we're not talking about, I got in a fight with my partner and I headbutted him. Like, we're not talking about like the physical, but it's a game of chess and it's a strategy. And we have a slogan in our No Fear program. And I just, for anyone watching this, I'm wearing a shirt that says KNOW, fear. If you're on audio, you would know that, but no fear. What we do is we talk about this idea of managing fear. And so a big part of the program, like if you think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? The bottom tier in that triangle, was survival. The top was self-actualization. If I look at that and I go, okay, I want this hierarchy of needs, this flow chart from survival to self-actualization. What does that look like for a violent encounter? What does that look for negotiating a rocky phase of a relationship, business, personal? And so we just want to be happy at the top, right? But we got to survive at the bottom. And we just can't have generic definitions of what survival is, because your survival, what you need to thrive in a situation may be very different. That goes back to that wiring aspect. But to circle back to your specific question of how do we make sure the training we do, the synthetic training, the replication training, how do we make sure that it's there for us at 2 a.m? And that's a great question. The secret to that is a word I use called replication. Most of the people who teach self-defense, most of them, the training is very stylized, meaning you're trying to exemplify the style, the martial art. So if you're doing Wing Chun, your stance is this. If you're doing Shotokan, your stance is here. If you're Taekwondo, you're balancing side. Every martial art has a look and a feel like branding, right? As a martial artist, you can look at, and I'm sure you've coached people in this. People understand, you got like brand guides. Hey, this is our color. This is our font, right? So styles are like that too, where I can look at somebody and go, oh, he does this type of Kung Fu. I know right away. Here's the, and I'm going to get a little nerdy for a second. Everything works in a demo. Everything works when you're practicing the moves. Will it work at 2 a.m? At 2 a.m, the problem is the bad guy has selected you and he's going to try and surprise you. He's not going to text you and message you and go, hey, 2 blocks, I'm going to attack you, get ready, right? So it's a surprise. So what I discovered in the 80s, and this is really what developed my whole system around the genetic wiring of the startle flinch, was that when a stimulus got introduced too quickly, our executive function was hijacked. Our executive function is what communicates with our cognitive brain. Our cognitive brain is where we control all the moves we practice. So if I said to you, hey man, if I threw a punch at you, what would you do? Your answer is always theoretical. Well, I'd slip and I'd bob and weave, I'd block it, I would do that. It's theoretical. We're visualizing an event in the future that hasn't happened, and then we're downloading in our mind what we think we would do. Well, so now you turn around at an ATM machine. I don't know if they call them ATMs in Italy, but everyone
They do.
Okay,
They
cool.
do.
And you're pulling out some money, and you're you're getting it for a cab, or you want to go to another bar and get a drink, and you do that, and you turn around, there's a guy there, and you're going, hey man, what's up? And he throws that punch. Your brain didn't have time to download there. So executive function gets hijacked, the cognitive brain is bypassed, and your survival brain takes over. And this is the startle flinch. Your survival brain will try to cover the head and push away danger. So I built a whole system around that. So I'm going to answer your question with 3 different stories. When we do self-defense training, we always design it from the bad guy has compromised us. The bad guy has surprised us. Why? Because that would be the most dangerous moment in your day, in your life, is if you were surprised by an attacker. If somebody calls you up and says, I'm going to beat you up tomorrow after lunch, that's scary and dangerous, but you've got like 24 hours to figure out, should I go to lunch at the same place? Do I need to call the police right now? Should I put my karate gi on and fight this guy, right? I'm making fun, but most of the time when we're ambushed in business and a relationship, and in the street, it's a surprise attack. And so what we do is, going back to the Maslow's hierarchy of needs thing here, is we build everything based on physiology, kinesiology, and psychology. So the approach is all scientific. It's not like, look, oh, you can't kick this way. Well, when you stretch for another year, and then you continue to do these drills, you'll be able to move your leg this way, where your focus, and this is going to get so nerdy, when you learn a martial art and a style, because you want to move that way, you're training your brain and you're myelinating neurons to create neural patterns to move a certain way. When you see somebody, put this in a visual context for your listeners, when you see a boxer warming up, you see very specific boxing movement. When you see a kung fu artist doing something, you see very, very different than boxing. But if you saw both of them in a street fight where they were scared and surprised, they would look the same. They would flail. You would see them scared, eyes open, and just swinging like those John Wayne haymakers. So I've created a self-defense protocol based on how we actually move under threat and stress. And so we talk about managing fear. We have a maxim: the people who manage their fear manage to fight. It's not a guarantee for victory, but in any battle, like you got to be there, and you will not show up if you don't agree to fight. And this is a really subtle thing, is when I'm talking fear management, people, they think, and for those of you watching, you can see what I'm about to do with my shirt. They think when they train to a certain level, they get to no fear, no fear. Like, okay, now I'm this good, I don't have any fear. But that doesn't exist. You mentioned Tyson earlier. He used to throw up before his fights. Did you know that?
No.
Yeah. He was so nervous, the physiology would make him puke in the room, right? George St. Pierre, one of the greatest mixed martial arts, also from Montreal. He just did a bunch of interviews where he said the scariest day of his life was every time he had to fight. But you would never see that when he would walk out. So this is important. Laurence Olivier, one of the greatest actors, threw up backstage before he come on stage. I was just on, I don't know if you know the name Mike Ritlin. He's a retired SEAL. He's got a long form, like a Joe Rogan podcast, but more for military. And he had me on his show, 3.5 hours long, man. But we talked and we got really deep into fear, because there's a lot of people, particularly in the military, law enforcement, martial art world, that tell people like, no, there's no fear. And I'm like, no, there's tons of fear. And he said something. He said, every time that they were stacked outside of a house, they knew everyone in there was going to try and kill them, and we had to kill them. He said, anybody who said they weren't afraid was lying, but we were trained and we understood how to manage our fear. And I love that. That was really, I thought, mindful of somebody, because I think it's a dangerous thing to think that you can get to a place where you won't have any fear. And because if you do feel fear, what does that do for you? If your whole belief system was predicated on, when I get to this level, I'll be fine. And isn't that the entrepreneur's, rat race wheel? Is like, when I have this much money, I'll be happy. When I acquire this, I'll be okay. And then we never do. We're like, I need this.
Yeah, we call it when then.
Yeah.
When I get 10 million, then I'll be happy. And that never works out, because then it becomes 20 million. When I think about the Secret Service, and I know you do a lot of training for pretty much every conceivable branch of the military, from special forces to the Coast Guard. I mean, you've done it all. When I think about Secret Service agents, and I just had a flash in my mind of Reagan getting shot, and I think about when you sort of like, look at that video and see how those guys reacted in the way that you're describing, which is that, that split second reaction. I know you've seen that video. Sure. When you see something like that, what do you see?
Courage, training, like stepping in front of somebody where you don't know where rounds are coming off. And I will say this, there's a symbiotic bodyguard instinct in parents too, right? That don't go to protective service, bodyguard school and learn how to do stuff. So there's a part in all of us where, if you saw something about to happen to your mom or your dog, or you're moving towards the danger without even thinking. But specific to that Reagan incident and that type of that's exceptional scenario-based training, where they replicated that type of confrontation. And I've worked with Secret Service and like formations and movement and protecting your principle and what you're going to do. Like, everyone has a role, but if you watch it carefully, what you see, and this is very interesting and very deep, you see a juxtaposition between their cognitive brain and their reactive brain. You can see this elasticity in the body of like, shit, it's happening. And there's these micro delays of, I should get the hell out of here, to know this is what you've been trained to do.
But in a microsecond.
Yeah.
It's like, you've seen, I'm sure you've studied this stuff where this Israeli guy, he was he did something for El Al, the airlines. And he was trying to train people for looking for bad guys getting on the flights to Israel, and they would have these agents that would be asking people in line getting ready to get on the flight these random questions, and it wasn't about the questions that they were asking. It was the micro expressions that you're referring to that would tell them in a thousandth of a second, did they flare their nostril? Did they raise their eyebrows, et cetera? So I guess my question around that is it possible to train yourself to instinctually act in the way that you can protect yourself, where it's been hardwired enough through replication so that you can go through what you just described, where it's that 1 second of, oh shit, this is happening, to that 1 second of, now I need to do this. Like, how much exposure do you have to your kind of work to be able to have it automated, the response?
Great question. So the amazing thing is in terms of, let me step back. To effectively navigate violence, you need to have good situational awareness, right? No awareness, no chance. If you can't see something, you can't get ready for it. Every victim of violence who ever lived to tell the tale said they had a bad feeling before the attack. What is that? That's one of the I's, intuition, right? I got a bad
Intuition.
feeling.
Yeah, it's not instinct. It's intuition.
Right?
Intuition. Yeah.
Right. I got a bad feeling is, you know, and so you need to have effective situational awareness. And then when your intuition, and this isn't like 90% of the time, it's 100% of the people I've talked to and 100% of the books on crime and violence that I've read over decades, where in whatever narrative it says, and, you know, Bill continued on his car despite feeling that something was off, right? You know, and I always, and this is again like that 12-year-old in me going, I'm not going to key eye, going. I remember reading a book. I was at the FBI Academy, and I was reading a book that you can't buy in Barnes and Nobles in their library. It was talking about the serial killer who had drugged a male and a female that were friends with him, and it's describing this whole story where they ended up, you know, capturing the guy. And how they captured the guy is he was sitting in the room with the gun, freaking out when the guy he drugged woke up, and the serial killer goes, "What'd you bring her here for? Now I got to kill both of you. I thought we were friends," like a nutcase, right? And the guy suddenly realized, oh shit, like he literally hates girls and he's going to kill us. And he says to the guy, he's sitting there, he goes, "Listen, man, I was really insensitive to your feelings and you shouldn't have to kill her." She was still out because he gave him the same amount of drugs and it wore off in him first. This is like I'm reading this whole story. It's like a crazy scene in a movie. And he says to the serial killer who's sitting in a chair across from them, like, you know, I got training guns here from class here, like holding a gun, like going, "Come on, I liked you, man. What's going on? What'd you bring her here for?" And the guy goes like this. He goes, "Dude, totally insensitive of me. I'll kill her. Let me kill her while she's still asleep. But you shouldn't have to do this. This is my fault. I'll take responsibility for this." And it took a couple of minutes. I mean, nobody was there, right? The guy that he ends up giving the guy the gun, and he takes it. He's got the gun, and he goes like this, and he steps away from the guy. He points it at her, make sure everything's ready, and then turns back and shoots the serial killer and kills him. And that's how the FBI caught the guy. And they debrief this whole story. But the whole chapter in this book was all about the serial killer. I read that and I went, oh my God, that's genius. That's instincts, intuition, and intelligent, creating a strategy to disarm somebody. If you had a gun pointed at me and I went, "Here, give me the gun," and you went, "Okay," like that's genius. What disarm is that? So I'm off on one of my crazy tangents, of course, of, you asked me, your question was, how long does it take training your system to know that you can do stuff? Because we based everything on, do I understand situational awareness? Do I understand fear management? Do I understand how to read intuition and then act on it? And then do I understand functional movement? What is functional movement? Well, if I turned around and you stuck a gun in my face, I would go, whoa, my hands would come up. Now, if just an insert here, weapons are typically used as tools of intimidation. They're used to get something from you. Bad guys only want property, body, or life. It's a really short list. The whole list sucks, but it's short enough for you to go, okay, this is going somewhere I don't want to go, right? Property, body, or life. So most of the times, 2/3 of the time, it's used as a tool of intimidation. And that gives you some psychological space to kind of, negotiate or comply or do whatever you feel. Now, if somebody says, get in the trunk of the car, put this hood on, move over here, and they're taking you to secondary crime scene. I'm an options facilitator. I'm not going to tell anyone what to do, but that's always a bad sign. Moving to a secondary crime scene, always a bad sign. And so when someone comes and trains with us, the first thing that we teach them is the skill and strategy of managing fear. And the biggest reframe here isn't to get to a place of no fear and no fear, but to get to no fear and realize that if you're in a violent situation, or if you're fighting for your business, or if you're fighting for your relationship, you should be scared because there's a lot at risk. But that doesn't mean you shirk your responsibility, or you don't show up, or you don't fight like hell. You just figure out a way to use fear as fuel.
Got it.
And that's really the message there. So we start there. In our program, we talk about situational awareness. We go, your intuition and your eyesight going, wow, that looks weird. Like everyone's wearing a t-shirt and those three guys are wearing hoodies and they got their hands in their pockets and they look, but you need to be seeing that. I make this joke that situational awareness is a conscious cognitive skill. So if you're asleep, you're not going to see anything. And it's a cognitive skill. In other words, you need to know what to look for.
Mm.
If you don't know what to look for, what are you left with? You're left with your intuition. I got a bad feeling. Let's move. Let's get out of here. I don't like this place. And so because everything is based on physiology, natural body mechanics, natural kinesiology, and psychology, the main ingredients, if you were if you as a tactical athlete were like a box of cereal and I could look at your ingredients, all the ingredients on the side, like what's inside this self-defense person, I'm using all hardwired stuff. It's all organic. So I'm not saying you got to train this for 30 days so you can punch in this weird formation. When you flinch and your hands come up, your fingers splay, your hands come in, and I teach people how to strike from the startle flinch. So we're teaching people to convert the startle flinch, because as your hands come up to cover your head, as you push away danger, you've got eye gouge, finger jab, palm strike, forearm, and elbow as natural weapons driving towards the threat. It's very fascinating. So we actually have a course called Be Your Own Bodyguard, and it's a day-long course because we teach. And if you ever done martial arts, you're probably going, "What is this guy's an idiot. You can't teach self-defense in a day." Yes, you can. Just in the same way you can teach CPR and tactical first aid in a day. It doesn't make you a doctor, so you can learn the principles of self-defense and some simple life-saving skills, just like knowing how to put on a tourniquet or do CPR. You can learn it very quickly, but it doesn't make you a black belt. It doesn't make you a martial artist. You can't go jump in the octagon and fight somebody, but you can certainly protect yourself.
Yeah, help keep you alive. That's for sure. All right. So as we wrap up, I'm going to do a quick rapid fire round of questions with you. And we're going to make sure that we link up to all of your products and what you do in the show notes. What would your friends say is your superpower?
Wow. My friends would probably think that I overthink. and it's weird. I hesitate on that one because I'm so hard on myself that I don't think of myself as a guy with superpowers. I just worked so hard, but I've been criticized a lot for overthinking things by the same people that go, "Wow, you're so successful." We had a different conversation. How did you create this entire system? And how do you teach these tier one guys in this corporation? And I went, because I overthink. Right?
It actually seems to some as a deficit, but it actually is your superpower that's allowed you to create the company that you've created. Do you collect anything, or have you ever collected anything?
At different phases of my life, guitars, and knives, but for a long period, Bruce Lee memorabilia, I happen to love watches. Yeah,
That kind of
like,
stuff. I know
yeah.
you're a music guy, and in my research, I found out that you're a Led Zeppelin fan,
Oh my God.
and I
Yeah.
actually saw Led Zeppelin in Madison Square Garden when I was a kid,
Wow. How old were you? Do you remember?
14.
Yeah. That's insane. At Madison Square Gardens, that's insane.
Yeah,
And Zeppelin. What's crazy is I had just gotten turned on to them. And I was like 15 years old, and all my other friends were into them. And for whatever reason, I didn't. And I discovered them. I'm like, oh my God. And they were coming to the Montreal Forum, 1976. And a friend of my family's had a hookup, and I had front row.
oh my God.
And Bonham passed away just
Oh,
before.
he died right before.
Yeah. So I was like, no,
Where is John Henry Bonham? Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay,
Crazy.
2 more questions. What
Yes.
book have you reread the most? Reread.
Yeah. This is going to be a boring answer for you guys, but there's a book that Bruce Lee put together called The Tao of Jeet Kune Do that, I read that and the Book of Five Rings for like 10 years straight when I was like 13 to 23, 25. Interesting anecdote about Tao Jeet Kune Do, which is spelled Tao, but I'm pronouncing it like a cool martial art guy.
Yeah.
I, in the 80s, became very good friends with Bruce Lee's son, Brandon Lee.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So Brandon and I were buddies. My son, Nick, took his first step. If you scrolling through my Instagram, you'll see a picture of Brandon holding my son, Nick, at like 9 months old.
Oh, wow.
We were friends. I worked on a movie with him in Hong Kong. I was on the set of The Crow 3 weeks before he had the accident. So I knew him for years, but I was visiting him one year he lived in Echo Park in near LA. And I'm sitting there one day, I'd just gone to his place. He had just moved, and I'm sitting there and I'm waiting for him. And I'm looking at his book collection. He's got all these martial art books there. So I'm like, I grab one and I'm looking at the books, and inside the books, there's like highlighting and circling. And all of a sudden I freak. I got goosebumps right now. These are all his dad's books.
My God.
And I'm holding like Bruce Lee's books because Bruce was like a voracious reader, and he would like underline and highlight all the like the Krishnamurti books and philosophy and physics and fencing and all this stuff. And there I was, and it just popped in my head. I had to tell you a story because it's, but Bruce wrote this book called The Tao of Jeet Kune Do, and it was all this philosophy, kind of like an encyclopedic book on his thoughts on fighting.
What a beautiful path you've had in your life. Can you imagine if somebody whispered in your ear at 15 years old, and when you answered your mom the way we started this podcast, and your mom said to you, oh, by the way, you're going to move to California, you're going to become friends with his son. Like, you would have went like, you're out of your fucking mind, mom. Right?
It's crazy, man, because you're making me tear up, and I don't want to cry in the show. I've had crazy experiences with another childhood hero of mine was Robert Wagner from the original Wild Wild West.
Sure.
And I ended up becoming friends with him, stunt doubling him on a movie he was doing.
Come on.
And then friends with him for years, like to the point where I'd go to, in the 80s, this is a great story. We become friends. I'm out in California where all the magazines are doing something for Black Belt magazine. We get together. You're going to freak. He takes me out to dinner at do you know where Boa Steakhouse is in Beverly Hills?
Yeah.
Okay. So before it was Boa, it was another steakhouse.
Yep.
I go to dinner with him there. I'm having dinner with Robert Conrad. He lives around the corner he's got a big suite in a local hotel. and he's the president of SAG at the time. And
Mm-hmm.
we're there and we're just chit-chatting because he loved fighting. He was a semi-pro boxer.
Yeah.
And how on the first day of the set, I'm like, this is a childhood hero of mine. I grew up watching, the Wild Wild West. Sugar Ray Leonard, also a boxing idol. I'd become friends with him. He gave me a shirt in 1980. He fought Duran in Montreal. Now, here's the thing you talk about, because I did tear up and I had goosebumps. If my mom said to me this things, part of me would say, holy shit, I'm so excited to hear you say that, because I know.
Wow.
When I met Brandon, we were walking and I said, dude, I always knew I was going to meet you.
Wow.
And he fucking laid into me, man. He stopped me on the sidewalk right after this acting class. And he goes, everyone wants to know me because of my dad. Nobody wants to know me because of me.
Mm.
And he gave me shit, and because why would you say to a random person, I'd meet you? It was because of his father.
Of course.
And he just tore into me, man. And I looked at him and I said, hey, we're standing like literally right over the crack of a sidewalk walking our way to Cantor's Deli in Hollywood.
Mm.
And I stopped and I said, wow. I said, hey, can you do me a favor? Could you help me out? And he goes, how do you mean help you out? I go, because I just stepped into this crack here and I feel about this big right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't get out of this crack by myself. And he kind of looked at me. I said, dude, I'm so fucking sorry. I can't believe how many times you must have heard someone say, you're Bruce Lee's son, you're Bruce Lee's son, you're Bruce Lee's son. And, we shook it off. We got to know each other and we became very good friends. After that, he came to Montreal, hung out with me. He trained with me. It was wild. But Robert Conrad, Brandon, Stallone, also at 16 when Rocky came out in 1976. I mean, which one of us, you're there, Rocky won. Saw it like six
the world.
times, right? I get a call from John Brown of Ringside Boxing Products. I'm developing some equipment with him. He says, hey, I got the next white hope for boxing here. His name's Tommy Morrison. When he come into town, I go there, I meet Tommy. 6 months later, he's got a role in Rocky V. John says, I need you to go to Rocky V and keep training Tommy, in between shooting days, just so he's doing his shadow boxing and running. So I end up meeting Stallone and getting to know so Robert Conrad, Stallone, Bruce Lee's son, like you talk about, but all of them, man. When Sugar Ray was fighting, when Sugar Ray was fighting Duran, I said to the guys at my school, it was 1980. I was already teaching teaching full time. I said to one of my students, Leonard and Duran are fighting. And they're like, holy shit. I said, oh my God, I can't wait to meet Sugar Ray Leonard. And two of my students said, how are you going to meet Sugar Ray Leonard? I said, I don't know. I'll figure it out, but I got to meet this guy because he was doing stuff in the ring that Bruce Lee only wrote about. So it's just all this weird,
you know what, man, I got to tell you, you're one of the most spiritually guided people that I've ever interviewed. It's almost like, it's obvious in the longevity that you've had and the path. Like it'd be interesting for you to listen back to this interview because your life was very, very clear at a very young age. And most of the people listening to the show don't have that gift. They struggle. It takes them a long time to figure out what they're passionate about. You had it right from the beginning, which is why you've reached the level of success you have, and why you have, all of these people that want to be around you and want to be connected to you because it's pure. And we all see it. We all know it when we see it. So what a great life.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Got it. You got it. Well, listen, we're going to link up everything in the show notes, and thank you for taking the time with us today.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I appreciate you. Like I said, you know, when you invited me, I always check out the website. I went, wow, you know, this is a great message. This looks like a great community, and I'm excited. I do want to leave one thing. The journey of my life was always derailed by my own fear. And so if you're an entrepreneur out there, you're trying to live your life, fear is natural. If somebody had taught me when I was young, lean into fear, learn about fear, let it be a fuel. I'm going to leave you. It's one of my favorite lines from our program. You can't be brave if you're not afraid. The primary ingredient of courage is fear. You can't have courage without fear. You can't be brave if you're not afraid. And so the next time you're afraid to make a speech or do a deal or say, we need to get a divorce, we need to get married, I'm going to defend myself here, and you feel your heart going, just lean into that. It doesn't mean that you're not skilled. And I just wanted to get that out there, because that my whole journey to right here, to this interview with you, could have been the same, but I'd have, let's say, more hair and less gray hair had I understood this idea of leaning into fear at a much younger age.
Great. What a great lesson. Thank you so much for taking the time with us. I really appreciate that, Tony.
Appreciate it. Thank you.